If you have not seen the previous episodes, please go back and watch them or this will not make any sense. So throughout this series, I've really kind of just broken small things down. I like to break things down to really teeny tiny bite-sized moves. And this might be a little contradictory to what they usually teach on, especially studying someone like Wagner and whatnot. I like to break his moves down into bite-sized moves because he does repeatedly use similar kind of moves all the time. And you could actually break them down into small moves that you can show people. And in this case, we're going to use the fully diminished seventh resolution to create a chromatic harmonic sequence by adding a new move trick. So instead of rambling on, I'm just going to open up the notation program. We're going to create a harmonic sequence. We'll go ahead and just start on C minor. And we'll immediately go to the 7 chord in C minor, like it's harmonic minor. If you can't read music, I apologize. Now we'll go to the E flat. That's one of the resolutions of that fully diminished 7th chord. And I will get out the keyboard here in a second and play this so people who don't read music can see it too. And I apologize, harmonic sequences are usually repetitive patterns that repeat, sometimes in key on different degrees, and then if you're chromatically modulating in different keys. So just as an instance, I'll show you in a second what I mean. If you don't know what a sequence is, I'm just writing in the chords right now. And this would be the fully, if you know basic chromatic harmony, which I have a course on, this can also be the fully diminished 7th chord of flat 3 in the key of C minor. And I'll put a link to that because basic chromatic harmony in key should be something that's mastered before you start messing around with this chromatic modulation. So we have the fully diminished 7th of the flat 3, which technically would just make it, a tonicizer effect if you know in key chromatic tonicizing chords and possible resolutions of that diminished 7th chord. We know it can go to that 3 chord. So what we're going to do different though is we're going to look at this E flat and say, what can this function as? So this is the new trick to add to this arsenal. What is this E flat? Where does E flat occur? So let's go to the keyboard. It occurs in C minor as the 3 chord. We're still using that diminished 7th resolution, okay? But where else can it occur? The 4 chord of B flat, for instance. Instantly making this a good modulation chord. So it could be the 5 chord of G sharp minor and harmonic. Where else? It could be the 1 chord of E flat, of course, itself. It could be the 5 chord of A flat. By doing this, we're treating the E flat as a neutral chord. It could go to any one of these keys. So what we're going to do is plan this out. It's also common as the 6th chord in G minor, which is related to B flat. It's a 6th chord in G minor. So we're going to use it as that. So we're looking at the functionality of where this chord occurs after we've used the fully diminished 7th chord to go to it. And this could be any chord you go to from a fully diminished 7th chord. You could do this same process. Let's treat it as the 6th chord in G minor. That's going to be our pivot point to G minor from C minor. Now and I'm going to show you something because I have an idea already. We could actually, when you arrive at a 6th chord, you could do something very simple. If you know the formula 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, which I usually have students memorize in all 12 keys, you could use that formula once you arrive at your new key. In this case, starting on the 6th part of that formula. And this will take us nicely to the G minor chord. A little bit of chromaticism, then suddenly a little bit more of in-key movement, temporary in-key movement. And this is why it's vital to know every chord of every key. And there's just no way around it. And I'm just being honest right there. This will also save, by knowing all these things, it'll also just save you a lot of time too, instead of guessing all the time. So now, this 5 will go to 1, which will allow us to start the same exact harmonic sequence in G minor. I'll pause and write it out in a way that's useful. So here we go. Here I wrote it out like this because it's useful for me in this particular order sequence. Look, it's a big sequential pattern. Chromatic, harmonic sequence, which technically you could turn into a never-ending loop, but I wouldn't want to do that in composition. I would probably use it as a kind of build-up, for instance. That's the thing with harmonic sequences, is sometimes you need to change things up instead of constantly just doing them over and over again. So I'll play through it really quick. G minor, same exact pattern. Now you could go to D minor and do the same thing. However, I'll just make it slightly musical. I'm not going to use like a lot of chromatic passing tones and whatnot like Wagner does for somebody, because that's just simply too hard to improvise with as a non-keyboardist. Just to show as a musical context. Break out of the harmonic sequence. Still using chromatic harmony, but modulation, I mean. So let's just stop there. It just gives you a general idea of what that possible harmonic sequence might sound like. Now, it's always a good idea to break out of them when you're actually writing music, but I would practice little exercises like this,